The day Marcus Johnson finished rebuilding the fence around his late mother's home, he felt a quiet sense of victory settle over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since the funeral. He stood back, admiring the clean lines of the freshly stained wood, believing for a moment that peace had finally returned to his life, until he saw her Mrs. Eleanor Hargrove, the infamous HOA president, march toward him with the stiff posture of a dictator approaching a battlefield, her lips pressed tightly together as if the very sight of Marcus breathing offended her. Before he could even greet her, she barked, "This fence is not approved by the Homeowners Association." Her tone carried the weight of someone who believed her authority outranked the law itself. Marcus explained calmly that the fence had existed for decades, that he'd simply repaired the collapsing sections out of respect for his mother's memory. But Mrs. Hargrove didn't care. She narrowed her eyes with a cold, calculated stare and hissed, "I don't like it, and if I don't approve it, it doesn't stay." The neighbors pretended to water their lawns, steal glances, and then look away quickly, terrified of crossing the woman who ruled the neighborhood like her own personal kingdom. Marcus tried to reason with her, but she pointed a pen at him like a weapon and shouted, "Expect a violation notice." She walked away smugly, heels clicking like gavel strikes, already convinced she had won. But Marcus didn't argue. He had seen people like her his entire life. People hungry for power, people who underestimated him because of where he came from, what he looked like, and how quietly he carried himself. So he simply nodded, wiped his hands, and went inside. But that night, everything changed. He woke to a violent crash, followed by the unmistakable sound of wood splintering. Racing outside, he froze in disbelief. Half his fence, his mother's fence, was scattered across the grass like shattered bones. And there, parked halfway on his lawn, was Mrs. Hargrove's truck. She stood proudly beside the wreckage, breathing hard, hair wild from exertion. "You're welcome," she said with a wicked smile. "I removed your unauthorized structure." Marcus felt his chest tighten. She had trespassed, vandalized his property, and destroyed the one thing he built to honor his mother. But even as anger surged through him, he did not yell. He did not break. He simply whispered, "You had no right." She smirked, tilting her head as if speaking to a child. "I have every right. I run this community, and you will follow my rules." The next morning, Marcus received a $900 fine from the HOA. Failure to comply, aggressive behavior, unauthorized construction. Aggressive. The man hadn't even raised his voice. Worse, she sent a community-wide email labeling him a problem, a troublemaker, someone who didn't fit the neighborhood. People who once smiled at him now avoided eye contact, afraid to be associated with someone Mrs. Hargrove targeted. But Marcus stayed calm. He documented everything: the photos, the emails, her truck on his property, the timestamps, the witness statements he quietly collected. And then, without drama, without threats, without even telling a soul, he filed a complaint. 2 weeks later, the HOA called a mandatory meeting. The atmosphere was tense. The board members whispered nervously. Unsure of why things suddenly felt different, Mrs. Hargrove strutted in confidently, armed with papers she planned to use to humiliate Marcus publicly. She began the meeting with a triumphant voice. "We need to address Mr. Johnson's repeated violations." And then the door opened. Everyone turned. A tall man in a black judge's robe entered, followed by 2 officers. Mrs. Hargrove's smile shattered. "I am Judge Wallace," he announced. "I'm here to present findings in the case Johnson versus Hargrove." The room fell silent. All eyes shifted to Marcus, who sat quietly, hands folded, not a shred of anger on his face. Only the calm dignity of a man who knew the truth was finally stepping into the light. The judge laid his folder on the table and spoke with firm clarity. "Mrs. Hargrove, based on the evidence provided, you trespassed on Mr. Johnson's property, vandalized his fence, issued fraudulent citations, and acted outside the legal authority of the Homeowners Association. Your conduct constitutes harassment, property destruction, and abuse of power." Her mouth fell open. "That's a mistake," she stuttered. "I was enforcing regulations." "No," the judge interrupted. "You were enforcing your ego." Gasps filled the room. He continued, "Effective immediately, you are removed as HOA president. You are ordered to pay Mr. Johnson $14,000 in damages, and if you interfere with him again, you will face criminal charges." Tears flooded her eyes as she collapsed into her seat, shaking uncontrollably. The woman who ruled with an iron fist was suddenly powerless, stripped of the authority she worshipped. Neighbors who had once feared her stared with wide eyes, shocked at the downfall of someone they thought untouchable. Marcus rose slowly, nodding respectfully to the judge. He didn't look at Mrs. Hargrove, didn't smirk, didn't celebrate. He simply said, "Thank you," and walked out with the quiet confidence of a man who fought a silent battle and won. Word spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. People apologized to Marcus. Some offered to help rebuild the fence. Others confessed they had always feared Mrs. Hargrove, but never had the courage to stand up to her. As for Mrs. Hargrove, she could no longer step outside without hearing whispers. That's the woman who destroyed his fence. She got exactly what she deserved. She thought she was untouchable. Justice had been served. But just when Marcus believed the nightmare was finally over, when he finally allowed himself to breathe, to feel the peace he'd been robbed of, he found an envelope in his mailbox. No name, no return address, just a single sheet of paper with a typed message that made his stomach drop. "You have no idea what she's capable of. This isn't over." And as he looked around the quiet street, he suddenly realized someone was watching him. Marcus stared at the anonymous note in his hands, the words echoing through his mind like a warning siren. "You have no idea what she's capable of. This isn't over." For a long moment, he stood frozen on his porch, scanning the quiet street where neatly trimmed hedges and identical driveways tried to hide the tension pulsing beneath the surface. Everything looked normal, peaceful, yet something felt off. A curtain rustled across the street. A car door clicked shut 2 houses down. Someone was watching him, and whoever left the letter wanted him afraid. But Marcus had already survived worse. He folded the note, tucked it into his pocket, and walked back inside, unaware that this was only the beginning of a deeper, darker storm. Over the next few days, strange things started happening around his home. His trash bins were knocked over every morning. His mail arrived ripped open, then sloppily taped back together. Footprints appeared near his backyard, circling the area where the fence once stood. At first, Marcus brushed it off as neighborhood kids or coincidence. But when someone left dead flowers on his porch with another anonymous message, "You should have stayed quiet," he realized he wasn't dealing with childish pranks. This was deliberate. Someone was targeting him. Someone who was angry. Someone who wanted revenge. Marcus reported everything to the police, but they offered little help. Could be teenagers, one officer shrugged, or a misunderstanding hard to prove intent. They said they'd keep an eye on the area, but Marcus knew it wasn't enough. Someone wanted to scare him back into silence, and the timing felt too perfect to ignore. Mrs. Hargrove had been humiliated publicly. She lost her position, her reputation, and thousands of dollars because of him. She had motive, she had pride, and she had loyal followers who weren't ready to see their queen go down without a fight. One evening, Marcus caught sight of her standing at the far end of the street, dressed in a long coat, staring directly at his house. When she realized he'd seen her, she quickly turned and walked away. He tried telling himself she was just passing by, but deep down he felt the truth. She wasn't done with him, not by a long shot. 2 days later, Marcus heard arguing outside. A group of neighbors stood near the community mailbox, voices raised, pointing at a flyer someone had posted. Marcus joined them, and when he approached, the crowd parted awkwardly, revealing the printed sheet. His heart dropped. It was his face, his name, and bold black text underneath: neighborhood threat, possible criminal activity, report any suspicious behavior. It listed a false claim that he had threatened HOA members, refused police cooperation, and had an aggressive history. None of it was true, but that didn't stop the whispers. That didn't stop the nervous looks. That didn't stop 2 families from crossing the street to avoid walking past him. Mrs. Grant, the kind older lady across the street, approached him quietly. "Marcus, this wasn't posted by the HOA. They're too scared to touch anything involving you now. This was personal. Someone made these on their own." She hesitated, voice trembling. "I think Mrs. Hargrove is rallying people behind the scenes. I've seen cars stopping outside her house at night, meetings, whispering. She's planning something." Marcus inhaled deeply. He just wanted to rebuild a fence, to rebuild his life, to honor his mother. Instead, he'd uncovered a neighborhood built on appearances, power struggles, and people willing to destroy others to maintain control, but he wasn't backing down. He started documenting everything again. Every flyer, every message, every incident. He spoke with neighbors, slowly earning back trust as they realized the claims were lies. Some even admitted to being pressured by Mrs. Hargrove in the past. But the more information Marcus gathered, the more dangerous things became. One night, he woke to the sound of footsteps outside his window, slow, deliberate, circling the house. He grabbed his phone, ready to call for help, but when he peeked through the blinds, the figure was already gone. The next morning, he found a fresh set of muddy prints leading toward the backyard, and in the dirt, carved with precision, were 4 chilling words. "You ruined everything." Marcus strengthened his security. New cameras, reinforced locks, motion sensors, but even that didn't stop the harassment. Late one evening, while reviewing footage, he saw a shadowy figure approach the side of his house, pause, and hold something up to the camera. When the image came into focus, Marcus's breath caught. It was a photograph of him taken earlier that day at the grocery store. Someone had followed him, watched him, stood close enough to take a picture without him noticing. This wasn't petty revenge anymore. This was obsession. The final straw came when Mrs. Grant knocked on his door, trembling. "Marcus, you need to see this." She handed him her phone, footage from her doorbell camera. It showed Mrs. Hargrove in the middle of the night, standing at the edge of Marcus's property, whispering something to a man in a dark hoodie. He stepped forward, pointing toward the house, then toward the backyard. They nodded to each other, and then the video ended. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't just harassment. It wasn't just intimidation. It was a plan, a coordinated plan. But as he studied the video again, his eyes locked onto one crucial detail, one detail that changed everything. The man with Mrs. Hargrove wasn't a stranger. Marcus recognized him. He had seen him before, many times. And suddenly, the entire situation shifted from unsettling to terrifying. Marcus looked up at Mrs. Grant, his voice barely above a whisper. That man, he shouldn't even be in this neighborhood. He was arrested last year. The judge banned him from coming here. If he's back, then… Marcus swallowed hard. Something much bigger is happening. He grabbed his jacket, stepped outside, and walked toward the edge of the street, determination burning in his eyes. He was done waiting, done being hunted, done letting fear chase him. But just as he reached the sidewalk, a black SUV he'd never seen before slowed to a crawl beside him. The tinted window rolled down halfway, just enough for Marcus to see the outline of someone sitting inside. A voice he recognized immediately whispered, with a chilling calmness, "We warned you once. You don't listen." The SUV sped off, disappearing around the corner, leaving Marcus standing alone under the streetlight, heart pounding, fists clenched, and one terrifying realization pressing down on him. This wasn't just about the fence. This wasn't just about the HOA. Someone else was involved. Someone powerful, someone dangerous, and whatever they were planning, Marcus was now at the center of it.